Greetings to another video. Today is the planning of riding across the Pyrenees. This took me weeks and weeks to plan, and I want to show you every single thing that I did so that you're able to plan a trip like this if you want to. And if there's one thing that I can say confidently about myself is that I am a meticulous planner. I plan every little detail. I want to make sure that everything runs smoothly, and I think that's why I had such a good trip. But I will say this took a lot of time and a lot of effort to plan this, so I'm just giving you that warning ahead of you planning your own trip like this. To make this a lot easier for you if you want to, I have created a guide of every single thing to do to create and basically ride the same route that I did. So it's got GPX files every day. It's got every single food and drink stop with Google Map links so you know exactly where they are. It's got kit list. It's got all the cols that you're going to climb with all the links to their like Strava segments. It's got how to get to and from the start, like with details of hotels, taxis, buses, trains. It's got everything in there to make this really easy for you. And that's almost, probably, I would say it's taken me longer to do the guide than it did to actually plan it, because I want to make it like a perfectly like bundled together with a little lovely bow so that when you go on this adventure, it's got every single thing that you need. All the time it took me to plan and pull all this together, it's just there in one perfect little guide. So I'll leave a link to that below. That's out today. I will leave a link to that where you can go and have a look at it. But I will show you now how I planned this adventure. The route. So this is like obviously the core of this whole thing, and I've never really ridden in the Pyrenees before. Didn't really know any of the cols. I didn't really know where to go, where to start, what to do. So the first thing that I do if I'm going to go anywhere new, I'll go on Garmin Connect Route Planner or on Ride with GPS. I actually did it on both for this, and just search Pyrenees, and there will be someone somewhere that has done some kind of similar route that you want to do before. So I looked on there and I found quite a few different ones, not necessarily the one that I wanted to do in my head, because I was like, I just want to go point to point. There were lots of different versions of it, and then I was like, oh, I wonder if anyone else has done that whole like coast to coast. And obviously the Trans-Pyrenees goes there, but theirs was like a really like extra long. It was longer than I wanted to do, so I was like, okay, how am I going to make it slightly shorter? And so I just started googling different companies that maybe do a similar route or one of a length that I kind of wanted. Also, just to say, like on the Garmin Connect and Ride with GPS, you can actually put filters in there of like distance of how far you want the route to be. So that's a really good little tip if you are wanting to go somewhere new. I then came across on all this Googling search. I then found the route that I did, well, pretty much the route that I did, and it's called the Pyrenees Raid. There are two different versions. It's kind of like an Audax, but there were two different versions. There's a shorter version, I think that was like 650k, and mine, which was about 800, and mine had 28 calls and more climbing. I was like, that is the one I want to do. So once I'd found the route, I was like, okay, how many days am I going to do it over? And I think this was the most time consuming thing, was splitting it up, trying to get equal amounts of days so that the days were kind of doable but equal in kind of either distance or elevation or in difficulty. So I spent a lot of time on Ride with GPS just chopping this route up into different versions, and I originally thought I was going to do it over 6 days, and then I realized actually the days are probably going to be a little bit too big, so then I did it over 7. So I'm trying to separate them up so they're all kind of equal. Along with that though, I'm then having to try and incorporate where I'm actually going to sleep each night. So it's then incorporating like to end in a town where there are places to stay, like hotels and bed and breakfast. So that added like another element into like separating this ride up into 7 different days. Honestly, that took so long. It sounds really simple. You just think, oh, I'm just going to chop it up. It was not. It was kind of laborious. It took quite a long time. But in this guide that I've done, all the separate 7 GPX files are there, and they end in towns where there's lots of accommodation. Actually, the first day doesn't. There's only really 1 or 2 places you can stay. The next thing to look at is actually how do I get to and from the start? So the start was in San Sebastian, the end was in Cerber, and I initially thought I could just get a flight into San Sebastian. I was like, there's bound to be one. But because the airport is so small there wasn't any like flights that I could get into it. So I was like, okay, how am I gonna get to San Sebastian? The closest airport was, I mean, I even looked at like maybe looking at ferries or like I guess trains part way and ferries. It was kind of like a long-winded process, and I found out that I was like, okay, probably the best way is getting a flight. So getting a flight to Bilbao, which is in Spain, and I think it was about, was it about 150k maybe to San Sebastian. So I flew into Bilbao, and then I was like, okay, how am I going to get from there to San Sebastian? And when I initially looked, there was a train, which took 2.5 hours. I was like, perfect, I can just do that. But then when I actually came to actually planning it, the train said that they were not able to take a fully assembled bike. Sometimes in Spain and France, they don't allow fully assembled bikes. Like in the UK, you just take just take a bike on. In France and Spain, sometimes they don't. They have to be in either a bike bag, a box, or in like basically just disassembled. So I was like, okay, maybe I could take a bin liner, take the wheel off, take the back wheel off, and just like tape it like at the train station. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. So then I found that there was a bus from Bilbao to San Sebastian, which took like, I think it was like an hour and a half. So it was shorter. And they took fully assembled bikes. And the actual bike went under the coach. It was like it's not like a little bus, it was like a big coach. It was really comfortable, it was really nice. And the bike just went, I took the front wheel off, but the bike went under the coach. But then when I came to book that, the only time that I could get one with my bike was 4 a.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, why have I done this? I could have got one later, but it would have got me to the start like almost like 10, 11 o'clock, and it was 140k. I didn't want to feel like I was rushing all day to get back in good time. So I was like, right, I'll just get up early. So I had a really, really early start to get to the bus station, which was about 5k away. But the day before, I made sure I went to Recce, where the bus station was, where you actually get onto the coach. And I'm so glad I did, because it was like you had to go through like it wasn't like a major train station where you just walk in. You had to go like down, like it was like I say like a secret door. It's like a little door, and you had to go down 2 flights of stairs, and then the coach was underneath. But because it was so early, that was the only way you could go down, because the main train terminal was shut because it was kind of like classed as the middle of the night, isn't it? So I reckoned that before. Also, I've put the Google like location link in the guide, so you know exactly where to go if you do go, so you don't have to go and Recce it the day before. So I did that, got there, got to San Sebastian, and then from there it was about 20k to the start of the actual official Trans-Pyrenees raid route. So I plotted that 20k, and then I started. So that was getting to the start, and then getting home was like another little Google rabbit hole, because I was like, okay, I'm in Seber, I can just get a train back. But then when I looked, because that was my initial plan, I was like, I'll take my bike box, I'll leave that in a hotel in Bilbao, and then I will get a train back up, pack it up there, and then get the flight back. However, there were no really good ways of getting back. It would have taken me more than probably like around a full day to get back. And I was like, that is a long time on trains. Not that I mind train journeys, because I mean, you're going through the Pyrenees, but I was like, oh, it's just a bit faffy. So I was like, okay, I will then I'll try and get a flight from somewhere near there. So I looked on the map. Girona wasn't that far away. I was like, Girona's perfect because it's a cycling place, and there's definitely going to be somewhere I can get a cardboard box. So obviously from the start, cardboard box, Bilbao, recycle the box in Bilbao. My hotel actually recycled it for me, which was very nice of them. Linked to that hotel in the guide. And then so when I was at the other end, there was a couple of options. Again, these are all in the guide as well. My initial plan was, because I thought I'd be exhausted at this point, I was like, I'll just get a train. Because there was a train from Seber direct to Girona. So I was like, perfect, that's fine. It wasn't expensive. It was probably like 10, 15 euros. I was like, perfect. When I actually came to booking it, the line from that route was closed for like maintenance work. So I was like, oh, how am I going to do it? So the only other option was to go north to Perpignan. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then back south to Girona. And that was going to take like 5 hours, I think. Not that the time matters, but the only problem with that is the train to Perpignan was okay because they allowed bikes, but the train from Perpignan to Girona was a high-speed train, and they're the ones that they don't allow fully assembled bikes. It was taking a bit of a risk of are they going to let me on it or are they not, because that's what I've found in the past traveling in France, is that sometimes they can let you do it, sometimes they are very rigid and like, no, you can't travel. So did I really want to risk it? And I had to then go like an hour or so north, so I was going further away from Girona. So I was like, okay, maybe I could just ride part way, and there was a train station about 50k away, so I was like, okay, I'll just ride the 50k, and it's called Figueres. So I was like, okay, I'll ride there and then get the train from there to Girona, because that was just like a regular speed train, not high speed. But actually on the day, I actually felt really good. I didn't feel too tired. So I was like, I'm just going to ride all the way from Sebe to Girona, which was about 80k. Wasn't too bad. A couple of busy roads, but it was fine. That route is also linked in the guide if you want to do that yourself. Then there's the options of getting the train or riding. So then I got to Girona. I had a night stay there. I then got my bike box from Trek, packed it up in the hotel, and then got a taxi the following day and then flew home. And then the final part of this is another meticulous, time-consuming task, which is food and drink stops. So I had my 7 days of routes, and then for each day I zoomed in, meticulously went through all the routes of finding where the food and drink stops were going to be. I also checked the times for those to make sure that when I thought I was going to be passing through, they would be open, because they have siestas. So you need to bear that in mind if you are going to go and do that, that they do sometimes close in the afternoon. So I went through for each day, found all the food and drink stops, and made sure that I had food at the end of the night. So maybe there was going to be a supermarket or a pizza place or somewhere that I could get like some food for my tea, and then also for the next day's riding. In the guide, I've also linked every single food and drink stop that I stopped at, so you don't have to go and do it, with a Google location link. So if you are out there, you can just click on it and it'll show you where it is and where the stop is. Also on the daily itineraries in my guide, you can be able to see like what kilometre the stop is, and then like, yeah, that's where the Google link is to show you on a map where that stop is. Because I just like to know in advance where my next food stop is, because some of the days your last stop for that day might be like halfway through the day, so you're like, okay, I've got to get enough for the rest of the day and enough snacks for tomorrow, for the first part of tomorrow. I just like to plan. I like to make sure I've always got food and drink and somewhere to stay, and I actually really enjoy planning these things. Like, it is kind of a laborious task, but I know a lot of you, one, haven't got the time to do it and just don't like doing it and just want something that's kind of just already made, which is why I've done the guide. This guide has taken me so long. I hope you know and appreciate the effort that I've put into this to give you an amazing adventure. There's also like kit list as well, because that's another thing that took me a bit of time before I went. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to take? What's the weather like? So I was checking weather forecasts, and just making sure that I had everything that I need, like repair kit, make sure my bike was okay. That's also another thing that I would suggest that you do before you go on a trip like this. Go and get like your bike serviced, or just get it checked over to make sure there's no kind of like potential issues that are going to happen. So like, make sure that your chain doesn't need changing, make sure your cassette's okay, make sure your cables are all good if you've got cables. I actually think is it the best trip that I've had? It's up there. It's one of the best experiences and trips that I've ever had, and that is why I want to create the guide, because I want you to go and experience that, because it is just phenomenally beautiful. Also, just a little bit of like a little summary of the guide. So you've got introduction to it, what you're going to expect going and riding across the Pyrenees. You've got getting to and from the start. You've got a packing list, so everything that I recommend that you take, literally in detail, every last thing that I took. Maybe you don't have to take as much because you know I took a lot. But it's also got daily itineraries, so day 1 to 7 of the actual GPX file, the accommodation, links to the accommodation. You've got the food and drink stops with links to Google Maps. Oh, also the calls that you'll do that day. There's also like an appendix at the back, which has got all the calls that you'll do on the trip. So you can go and have a look at them on Strava. You can star them so that you know what to expect. There's also an option for day 1 to kind of split that one in half with another recommended place to stay. There's also three different options for the final day of getting back to Girona, and then the recommendations of where to get bike boxes from, and the hotel I stayed. So it's just got every last detail that you could ever want, and it's the guide that I wish I could have bought for myself before I went and did that trip, because it would have just saved me loads of time. But I guess I do like it, and it is part of my job, and I've got the time to do it. You might not necessarily, so I think it is definitely worth the pennies. Let me know where you want me to do a ride across series. I've actually got 3 more ride across series planning. I just can't wait to go and do more of these trips and adventures and share them with you, and then create guides so you can go and do the exact same thing. But in the next video, it'll be announced where I'm actually going. I think you might be able to guess, but I'm so excited. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support on that ride across the Pyrenees. But honestly, the comments were just, I've read every single comment. I might not have replied to them all. I've read them all. And thank you so much. Goodbye, goodbye.